Hi, I'm Lori Jones, President and CEO of Avasec Communications and host of StrategyCast. Join me and my guests, innovators, disruptors, and visionaries, as we explore bold and brave marketing strategies that help you transform, scale, and grow your brand. We've got a fantastic show lined up today. I am joined by Andrew Dod, a marketing strategist with over 35 years of experience, including serving as a CMO for multiple companies. Get ready to unpack what he calls the balanced scorecard business model and his insights into breaking down complex strategies, connecting your KPIs, and fostering a strong culture. It's an approach that helped Hilton hotels boost customer satisfaction by 5% and cut costs by 15%. It's all about actionable strategies, balanced scorecards, and the vital collaboration between sales and marketing. Get inspired on today's StrategyCast. And don't forget to check out the most recent issue of StrategyCast newsletter on StrategyCast.com. Just like this episode, it's full of inspiration and a ton of ideas that will elevate your strategies and marketing know-how.
A competitive edge starts with strategy, and strategy starts with knowing how to develop one. StrategyCast is a leading marketing podcast that serves up strategic insights, trends, and tips to help separate your business from the pack. Tune in weekly as host Lori Jones interviews bold marketing leaders who have priceless wisdom and are willing to share. Each episode explores cutting-edge approaches that have proven instrumental in transforming brands into industry trailblazers.
Welcome to StrategyCast. Today is another incredible episode. And guess what? You're going to want to get your pens out. You're going to want to take a look at the show notes beforehand because we've got a downloadable tool for you that Andrew Dod, our guest today, is going to share with you all about execution of strategy and a methodology that he's deployed with many companies that have really been able to create tremendous success. Welcome to the show, Andrew.
Good to be here.
Oh my gosh. Andrew is an encore guest. I interviewed you probably, it was early on, maybe 5 years ago on the show. Yeah, I'm so excited to have you back. Tell us what you've been up to and a little bit about your journey in general.
Yeah, sure. So I have been in marketing, strategy, and communications for about 35 years. I became a CMO back in the mid-2000s and have been either a full-time or a fractional CMO ever since. I've started 5 different companies, agencies, innovation consultancies, and have really enjoyed that entrepreneurial track in my career. But I've also had some CMO stints in very large companies, publicly traded companies, and so forth.
Yeah.
So pleased to be here and have followed your progress over the years.
Thank you. One thing that you and I is at kind of the core of our ethos is not just strategy, but the strategic development that goes into developing an executionable strategy. And There's nothing worse than seeing a plan written and it's simply going to the shelf.
Yes.
Which is really why we changed the branding of the show from Integrate and Ignite to StrategyCast, because I really felt like we were spending so much time developing incredible strategies for companies. And either we were overshooting what they had the capacity to implement internally, or we were developing it's still a great strategy in that situation, but we were developing strategies that just weren't implemented. They didn't have the team in place to get it done. And that's really what we're going to dive in today. And that's really, it's one of your sweet spots, is teaching companies to have the capability to implement strategy.
That's correct. The sad fact of the matter is that every single company has a strategy of some sort. It might be written in a binder and sitting on a shelf and looked at maybe once a year or once every couple of years, or it might be written on the back of a napkin at a pub somewhere. And those strategies it's like a tree that falls in the forest.
Right.
Does it make a sound? Well, if it's not executed, it's not going to do what it's intended to do.
Right.
If you don't develop a strategy that you live with and breathe every day, you can't do quarterly strategy reviews, not with the speed at which businesses is moving today. You've got to be constantly measuring and seeing whether or not you're achieving what it is you're seeking to achieve in your strategy.
Right. It's interesting. You've got some great stats here. And based on many, many different sources out there, the estimate is between 60 and 90% of companies fail to execute on their strategies successfully. What are some of the barriers to success?
Well, the barrier is, number one, that strategy can't be owned just by the management team. It has to be owned by everyone, all the way down to the most junior person in your company has to understand what the strategy is, has to understand what their role is in helping to achieve the strategy, and has to have complete buy-in in terms of knowing that this is why I am doing X, Y, or Z. Because if I do X, Y, or Z to a certain KPI, a certain key performance indicator, then my role is going to help push that strategy forward, and we're going to be able to achieve better things as a company. The problem is companies lack either the discipline or the framework to accomplish and execute their strategies. They know how to write them. They know how to get in a room and whiteboard and say, we're going to go do this or we're going to go do that, but they don't have the capability to think through what those decisions might make. For example, if you're a technology company and you've decided that you want to go into, you want to sell your software into South America, think about the repercussions of that decision. First of all, you've got language barriers that you've got to overcome. What types of people do you now need to hire in order to execute into this new marketplace? What types of new support people? What types of new translations do you need to do? All of those things have a trickle-down effect. But if you're not really thinking, a management person, a board member can say, we need to go take the South American market. Well, let's think about the ripple effects of that decision alone and whether or not we have the ability to execute that strategic initiative. And if we don't, what do we have to do to put into place in order to achieve that strategy?
Yeah, and that seems so basic to you and I, right? But it's a fundamental issue in executing strategy. I think another issue is that it's like kept really close. Strategies are kept very, very close to the chest of a senior team, and not everyone within the organization fully understands what they're executing against.
That's right. If you do not have full, complete, total 100% buy-in from your leadership down to your entire company, in terms of what you're going to be asking people to execute against, you're not going to succeed. That's why these up to 90% of strategies fail to get executed. Even ones that are really well-formed strategies, 67% of those fail.
Yeah.
So we're talking about the lack of understanding of, it's not if you build it, it will get accomplished. You have to build it and you have to massage it every day. You have to be in your strategy every single day if you have any hope of accomplishing what it is you're seeking to achieve.
Let's set the stage here. We've got some great examples that we're going to share today on companies that are doing a great job as this. As we dive deeper into some of the key things that we want to consider here, what is a great example of a company that is doing this and doing it well?
Well, I can point to, there are lots of different companies who are doing things really well, but one in particular, and I'm familiar with it because I used to live there, is Mecklenburg County. Which is where Charlotte is located in North Carolina. They looked at the way that they were making decisions from on high and all the way down through the rank and file of individuals who were working for the county, and they redid their entire decision-making process and matrix, making sure that there was clear alignment between what the strategy was in terms of what they were seeking to accomplish, who the personnel were, who were going to be responsible for executing those strategies and what the measurements were going to be. And then they implemented a really robust communication system to make sure that that filtered throughout the entire organization.
Right.
Other companies that have done really successful implementations include Aetna, Mobil, Rockland. They're across the board where major decisions that are made in research and development, they weren't communicating clearly with the marketing team. So there was a misalignment in terms of what was coming out of R&D and how marketing needed to prepare to go into new markets with new products as they were being developed. Everything was a rush. And when everything's a rush, that's when things get lost in the shuffle.
How often do you find that a company, like an early stage company, just starts out with great strategy and the implementation, the process implementation needed to get it executed? Or you might have a middle stage, a later stage company that is failing on its strategy, and they just have to take a seat back and say, okay, we've got to start the process over and implement a lot of what we're going to talk about in a minute, a better way of getting things done.
Yeah. So I've never seen a startup have a great strategy. And frankly, they're not supposed to, because a startup is moving so quickly in the early stages of their life that if they were to write a strategy in stone and not pivot to where the opportunities in the market is giving them opportunities to pursue, that's a dangerous territory. And I work with a lot of companies who are in that startup phase,
right?
Who they think they have all of the answers about what their product is going to do or what their service will do in the marketplace. And the market is telling them something totally different. You have to be adult enough and serious enough to say, my baby's ugly. And I've got to change this to reflect what the market is telling me. Now, for older, more mature companies who have existing businesses who are growing at a particular predictable rate, they might want to expand their value proposition into different areas. And that's when you really have to look at the strategy and say, if we do this, what are we not going to be able to do anymore? Because if you're going to add something into your strategy, sometimes that requires you to pull something else off of your table. Because remember, this is the most important thing. If anyone can remember this from this StrategyCast today, strategy is two sides of one coin. It's what you decide to do and what you don't decide to do.
Such great advice.
In the order in which you're going to do it, the priorities. Remember, if everything's a priority one, nothing is a priority one.
I love that. And I think what happens is that people are throwing so much at the wall to see what sticks and then saying, okay, let's stay there, instead of being very intentional and having the study and the research backing them on what they should be doing.
That's correct. That's absolutely correct. You have to be intentional and purposeful in developing your strategy and in executing it. And that might sound really simple, but it's not. It's not, because every day there are distractions that pull you off, a new opportunity here that you might want to add in. But if you're constantly lobbing grenades into, say, the marketing department and say, no, we're going to go do this now. Well, we already have 14 other things that we've already agreed on as a team. These are the 14 things that we said we were going to do to accomplish our goals. And now you've thrown a bomb or a grenade into the team. Now we've got to rejigger everything and decide, what are we not going to do first?
And that's
what are we going to do second?
It's exactly why the tenure of CMOs is so short.
That's exactly right.
The business strategy is failing the marketing strategy. I've talked a lot about that this year, and I've seen it dozens upon dozens upon dozens of times, where either with one client right now, we're on our fifth contact in a very, very short time. And, we're trying to keep the glue together for them, but it's an issue. We see it a lot. There's so much to consider here. And a lot of times, we're going to talk about 5 things that are very, very important in executing this. the first one is that clear communication and clear intent of leadership. How, and you've got a methodology with that, but before we get there, as a marketing team, knowing that leadership is, the most important aspect of executing on a strategy and marketing success, how can a marketing team push back when they see that leader constantly pivoting? I mean, some pivots are great, but then you really see a lot of leaders that not just pivot, but they're flip-flopping back and forth. And you can't, we've got a flip-flopper that we said, we resigned a piece of business earlier this year because they were constantly flip-flopping and blaming everyone in the room.
That's right. Well, first thing, when I hold meetings with my teams, I call them brutal truth meetings. And in a brutal truth meeting,
BTM,
you have to be fearless. You have to speak your mind. You cannot censor what's going on in marketing. If you do, you're self-censoring yourself. You're basically a coward. And I hate to say it that way, but you have to be brutally honest about what is going right and what is going wrong. Because if you don't do that, things will slide and the CMO or the director of marketing or the VP will come to you and say, what's going on with social, or what's happening with pay-per-click, or what's happening here? We're not achieving you have to be upfront, and you can't operate out of a sense of fear. And I'm talking associates, managers, directors. You cannot operate out of a sense of fear that you're not accomplishing something. The CMO wants to know, he or she wants to know when something's not going right so that they can address it, they can fix it, or at least attempt to fix it. And by you bringing that forward in a fearless way, in a brutally honest way in your meetings with your supervisors and managers and directors and whomever, that's really where you can show yourself as a marketer with foresight and the ability to execute very effectively.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's great. So along with this clear communication and everyone understanding their roles, you implement a balanced scorecard at this stage.
Well, yes, but you really need, I don't want to underplay the communication aspect.
Right.
It's not a one-time meeting where the CEO, or worse, the CEO sends out an email and says, we're going to go through this new framework, this new process. We're going to use the balanced scorecard to really hone in on our strategy. Everyone has to be on board.
Right.
Done. That's not going to work. Okay. What you have to do is you have to get your teams in rooms. The CEO or whomever is your executive leader, executive sponsor needs to be in there every single time. Has to show that this is critically important to the success of our company and the future of our business. Everyone has to be bought into it. You have to do webinars. You have to bring disparate people together. All of that is critical. The second, after you do communications, you really have to look at the alignment of people, processes, and technology. We talked a little bit about that at the beginning. If you're not aligned, that's where you're able to see the gaps that exist. If we want to go into, like I said, if you want to go into South America, there are gaps to accomplishing our strategy. We need these 5 initiatives. We need to put these 5 initiatives in place before we think about putting one piece of marketing into that marketplace. Yeah. That's the second thing you have to do: alignment of people, processes, and technology.
And then, then moving into that third thing, it's performance culture focused on that continuous improvement. That is truly, you're just building an incredible mindset through, improvement, culture, leadership, leading up to all of this.
That's correct. So you've seen plenty of the insides of plenty of companies. They all have their individual cultures. Some are highly collaborative, others are highly insulated, and everything in between. If you're going to implement this system, the balanced scorecard, if you're going to really get serious about executing your strategy, you have to be focused on a culture that's constantly examining performance and trying to constantly improve performance, even if only by a degree or so. That needs to be ingrained in everything you do. Again, you can't do this quarterly, or worse, annually or biannually. You can't do it. This has to be a part of, inculcated in your DNA, in your corporate DNA, that strategy execution is extraordinarily important. And if you're not doing it, if you're not paying attention to it every day, we will fail. We will fall short of our goals.
How often do you find that people aren't on the train, that they just don't have buy-in, or they don't want to understand it? They want to sit in their cubicle or go to the line and, just simply get their job done, and really they're not focused on what the end game is.
Yeah. So it's a trickle down. So management, the board, they're bought into the strategy, they're bought into the framework and the process and so forth. The challenge is, as you filter the strategy and what you're trying to execute through the organization, if each individual employee doesn't feel connected to what you're trying to achieve, they won't have buy-in.
It's a top-down issue.
It is. And so that's where the communications comes into play. That's where every single director, manager, VP, whomever, has to have direct connection to every employee within their purview to really make them understand exactly how they fit into helping to achieve the strategy.
Yeah. Developing and designing and implementing that strategy map is the next part of this. Talk to us about how ultimately you create the visual behind linking the strategy and the objectives across all these different playing fields within the organization.
Yeah. So I'll go through sort of some of the things that you can have your viewers download, if that's okay now, Lori.
That'd be great.
So if you think about a business, you currently operate and you're projecting that by the end of 2024, you're going to be doing $10 million a year. That's your current projection. The reason to really hone in on your strategy execution process is to create a delta between what you're currently projected to achieve and what you might be able to achieve if you were to implement initiatives that would have a successful impact on your financials. So what you're talking about is a line that's going like this to a line that's going like this. And the delta between those two lines, the chasm between those two lines, is where strategy execution really plays a role. So you're going from basic operations to something where you're really throttling your strategy execution and your frameworks in order to achieve better results.
And that's where behavioral change that you're talking about is essential to make sure, that you can create that growth. That's correct.
Now, we've all been in a number of different organizations and companies where there's a little alignment, but not really clear alignment from what I call the accountability cascade. And the accountability cascade involves, at the very top, is your mission, your vision, and your values. Okay, those three are usually set by the board or by the management team, the executive management team. Underneath the mission, vision, and values are your brand, your business plan, and your marketing strategy and plan. And that's basically defining how you'll go to market. That's typically the responsibility of the CMO and his or her senior associates. Underneath those are marketing initiatives, major action items, and milestones. Okay, so once the CMO has finished the marketing strategy with the other senior members of the team, he or she will define various marketing initiatives and major action items that individual performers on the marketing team will have to accomplish. What's that?
One thing I love about this model is the importance placed on brand. Most people, and it's before the business plan, most people place brand within marketing They don't separate it out, number one, and they don't really place it above the business plan.
That's right. If a company, and I do this very often, I'll get when I start an engagement, I'll get the entire management team in a company, in a room together and say, in 5 to 7 words, tell me what your brand stands for. Write it down. Guaranteed, there will be, however many people are in the room, that's how many different definitions of their brand there are. That's fundamentally a failure on management's part, not to have everyone clearly understand it. You can think of great brands across the world and you know what they stand for. If I were to say to you, Ritz-Carlton, you know you're talking white glove service. It's ladies and gentlemen caring for ladies and gentlemen, right? That's what their brand is. If I told you Disney's about magic, right? If your management teams that you're working with don't understand that it's 1 or 2 or 3 really important elements that you feel viscerally in your gut, your brand is going to mean different things to different people, and that's terrible. Remember, a brand is not an identity. A brand is the headspace that you own in a particular constituent.
Yeah.
And when they hear the name of your company, they immediately go to something. BMW, performance, those sorts of things.
It's that feeling, right? And I also like to take that a step further, and then we'll get to the bottom of the accountability cascade. A brand is what your customers say about you, how they feel about you. So magic, I mean, how you feel magic when you go to Disney is all about the experience that is created, but how they describe that and what they say is really where you take the brand.
That's correct. Again, it's not, if I say this about my company, people will believe it.
Yeah.
No, you don't own your brand. You set it on a trajectory, but you've got to care for it day in and day out. But your brand is really in the mind of your customers, your partners. That's it.
Okay, so, bottom of accountability cascade.
Yep, is mission, vision, values, brand, business plan, marketing strategy, marketing initiatives, major action items, milestones, and then you get into the measurements. Team KPIs, so your marketing team overall, how are we measuring our performance overall? And then individual KPIs. So Sarah, you're the social media manager. These are the 5 major KPIs that you're going to be measured on. So these are the things you need to pay attention. So once you've understood that accountability cascade, then you can move forward. The first thing you have to do, and this is where you have to start being brutally honest with yourself, you have to look at your funnel. If you're a marketing team, you look at your funnel, you look at, and you create a change agenda. Now, what is a change agenda? It's very simple and you don't have to overthink it. You have to be brutally honest about what you're doing in each element, in each stage of the funnel. So starting with your brand and awareness, to lead generation, to your empathy and nurture process, you have to go through your business development. So that might be sales development people in your sales force. And then you've got to look at post-sale engagement. So after the sale, marketing still owns that customer after the sale, to really turn a customer from just a buyer to a repeat buyer, and then from a repeat buyer to a brand champion. Yeah. So you go really deep in with your marketing team on those levels: brand awareness, lead generation, empathy and nurture. Get into your business development process, post-sale engagement, and brand champion. You have to get in a room. You have to be brutally honest with everyone there about where you are today. Then you take a deep breath. Once you're comfortable, you've been accurate and you've really drove in on where you are today as operating team. Then you have to say, what do we want to be like? And you pick a time specific by the end of 2024, by the end of 2025. Wow. Those sorts of things really come into, we want to be more like this. We want to be doing more of that. We want to try more of this. So you put there are 2 columns, and you've got those various elements that you're going through. but it's your as is state to your want to be state by the end of a particular time. That's your marketing change agenda.
And what I love so much about this, Andrew, is that sales is at the table, and we cannot talk enough about the importance of having that, connection between sales and marketing here. There are so many organizations out there that operate in silos that they're just going to say, okay, this is our sales change agenda. We don't need marketing at the table, or vice versa. This really puts everyone at the table together, and how marketing is going to affect positive change when it comes to biz dev.
That's correct. So I start every engagement with the same thing. It's the same statement, and I can't take claim of authorship. It was from another agency who I was partnered with 25 years ago. They would start every engagement with the same thing. No one cares about you, your company, your product, or your services. They only care what you can do for them.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So don't think just because you exist, you matter.
Yeah.
You have to make yourself matter to companies. You have to make sure that you're speaking on their terms. How many times have you gone into a client and you read their brochure or you look at their website, and what do you see? I do this, we do this, our software goes this fast. It's beating up the chest, right? It's all about me. Yeah. No, you have to turn it around and make it about them, the customers. You have to speak in their language, with their lexicon, using their nomenclature. You have to fit into the customer and into the market. If you're only talking about me, you're forcing them to think too hard.
And we're still having this conversation 25 years later. I've been having it for 37 years now, and people continue. Yeah, that could be a whole nother show. Then we move into the marketing strategy map.
Yes. So the strategy map is, the first time you look at it, it might intimidate you, but it grows on you. Within a couple of hours, you understand and you can see what it is. And I explain it this way. As kids, we all used to play connect the dots. Open up that little, the little book, and you connect the dots. Okay. It was really easy because there were numbers, right? Go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 to 6. Well, we play the same game in building a strategy. It's connecting the dots and making sure everyone understands that what you're trying to achieve at a financial level, the value level, has an impact, a direct link to what you're trying to achieve with your customers. Yeah. And below the customer level, it's what you're putting in place to achieve certain beliefs by the customers. So if you want the customers to believe X, Y, and Z about you, what are you doing to achieve X, Y, and Z? So that's your process level. So you've got your value level at the top. You've got your customer level below that. You've got the processes and the projects that you're going to be putting in place to achieve those customer beliefs. And then below that, you have an enabling layer. And on that enabling layer, that's where you have to identify what we need to either hire or buy or retain or put in place in order to achieve these major projects that we're putting in place. So it's a linked system, all tied together, making complete sense of how you're going to what your strategy is and how you're going to execute.
And then upper management, C-suite is top down, and then the lower management and worker bees, field staff, whatever it might be, is more bottom up with this model.
Yeah, I like to say that board members and management teams read a map from the top down, and rank and file employees read it from the bottom up, because that's where they're really feeling what their role is and how they're fitting into the strategy map. Because somebody who, if you're working on a manufacturing line or whatever, may not have any understanding or appreciation for what the value goals are at the very top. That's set by your board and by your management, but the individuals those are the ones who have to be brutally honest about, I don't have the tools or the talent in my bailiwick. I don't have these things in order to achieve this. That's why I have to raise my hand and say, I need training on this in order to help achieve this particular process or project.
It's fantastic. We're going to go through the final 5 slides here that, of course, you guys are seeing on screen a little bit more quickly. The next one is strategy map objective definitions from the customer's perspective.
So really quickly, once you've identified that we want our customers to believe X, Y, and Z, you have to get your entire marketing team in a room and say, okay, what initiatives could we put in place? Not that we're going to do them all, but it might be 10 or 15 things that we might want to execute to achieve X, Y, and Z. You might have 15, 20 of them. Then you're going to prioritize them based upon a couple of prisms. You're going to look at their strategic relevance and your delivery capacity, and whether or not the impact is urgent, and whether or not you have the ability to achieve it. Again, you're not building a plan to be put into a binder, to be put onto a shelf. It's all about execution. So once you've identified your initiatives, your potential initiatives, you're going to filter those into the ones that you are going to accomplish or attempt to implement. Once you've identified your major priorities, then you're going to create an initiative card for each one of those initiatives. It really goes through what the deadlines are, what the budget is that you're going to be putting against it, who the people are who own it, what the major action items are underneath. Once you've done that,
I love it. I love this because it becomes a playbook for people to really refer to and go back to, and it deduces it down to such a level and in such snackable pieces that you fully understand what this is about.
Correct. And the first time you go through this, you will, there are epiphanies all over the place.
Right.
You now feel, and this is a great thing for culture too, because in some companies, if you've got isolated pockets and disparate cultures, they're not all on the same team. This really pulls them together. This is the discipline and the diligence to really pull your culture together. So it has way more positive impact than just executing a strategy. It really pulls your culture together.
Yeah. Then, of course, there isn't a strategy without marketing KPIs, which is next.
That's right. And those are the final things. And the final elements are, okay, we're seeking to accomplish X, Y, and Z. How are we going to know whether or not we are on the right path, the right trajectory, and the right speed to accomplish these particular things? So you're going to define team KPIs within your marketing, and you'll have base goals, stretch goals, and reach goals. And then your final is going to be, here's Sarah, the social media manager. What is Sarah going to be measured on? She will have her own KPIs, and there might be 6 or 8 or 10. It depends. These are the things that you are going to, Sarah, these are the things you're going to be measured on. These are the things your performance will be measured on. And by the way, now let's read it back up, and you'll see exactly how what we're asking you to do and measure ties in with the team KPIs, which ties in with the corporate KPIs, which ties into the overall strategy. Yeah. Again, it's just like playing connect the dots.
It really is. And Andrew, this is so much value to our listeners. You cannot imagine how much I appreciate this. 2 questions, and then we're going to get into how listeners, you can download this. So what is the most difficult part of implementing this in its entirety? And then of the process that you shared, is there an area that typically is difficult for people to wrap their hands or heads around?
Yeah. So the first thing is, again, you need buy-in up and down the chain. And that requires clear leadership, emphatic leadership. We are doing this, and we are going to stick to it. We are not going, this is not just the play of the month, and we're going to forget about it next month. No, this is inculcated in culture. This is what we're going to live and breathe every day. We're going to look at it. We're going to look at where we've got yellows on the board, where we've got greens on the board, where we're doing well, where we're in danger, where we're really falling short with red on the board. Wow. And it's very easy to do. There's a great software company, ESM Software, that that enables this very easily to be filtered throughout an organization, I highly encourage taking a look at them. I don't have anything to do with the company, but it's a great piece of software. But the most difficult thing is when you start defining what the individual and team KPIs are, because people are concerned about getting hemmed in. And they usually will shoot really low on in terms of what they're seeking to accomplish, which is why I always require base, stretch, and reach goals, so you know where you are in process.
So Andrew did so much work prior to our show today and brought forward a lot of different examples. One of my favorites is Hilton Hotels. They adopted this entire methodology to specifically enhance customer satisfaction and operational efficiency. By focusing on customer and internal process perspectives, Hilton improved its customer satisfaction scores by 5% and reduced operational costs by 15% over 3 years. Phenomenal KPIs. But time is an important consideration here. And that's why I love this example as well. You can be achieving goals, pretty quickly, but the lifespan of really achieving some of these guerrilla goals can take time.
That's absolutely right. And so you think about it, you say, well, 5% doesn't sound like a lot, but think of the base that you're starting with. You're talking about Hilton, right? So a 5% increase is massive.
Yeah.
And 15% reduction in costs over a 3-year period, that's probably hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of savings, if not more. So you're talking about, we're not talking save a dime here or earn an extra dollar here. We're talking the potential for massive changes if you execute your strategy correctly.
Yeah.
And
the other thing I think we need to bring up is, and this is where agencies like Avocet can really help, is these earlier stage companies. They may have just received a $10 million tranche, and they have got to start executing on a lot of different KPIs. This methodology is going to be very, very effective for them, but they may not have the entire team to implement it. And Avocet has stepped in as the entire marketing team in some of those situations, and even as a CMO consultant, similar to what you're doing. Either we're working with a CMO consultant, or we become that consultancy as well, to really help execute on all of this. Talk to a little bit about where you see some of the success and outsourcing needed for some of these, earlier or middle stage companies.
Yeah. So number one is, if you had this entire, and your folks will see it when they download it, but if you had this program in place and you had everything already articulated, you might have got that $10 million tranche a little earlier.
Yeah. Love it. Good point.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Remember, this is malleable. This is malleable. You're constantly working it like clay to a sculpture. You're constantly adjusting, constantly being honest with yourself about results. You're taking daily learnings of what's coming in. So you're looking at results, you're filtering them to see what's going right and wrong, and then you're making adjustments. You're taking those learnings and you're putting new programs in place. But it's all based upon what the market is telling you, right? It's all based upon the results that you're achieving in the market, and not based upon any arbitrary decisions. You're looking at market-driven data and making your decisions about your strategy and what you're doing based upon that.
Yeah. Well, incredible insights today, Andrew. And for our listeners, you're going to be able to download this document on the StrategyCast.com website. There'll be a link there right in Andrew's at the end of his bio, and you'll be able to get that there. Before we leave, first of all, thank you. Oh my gosh. I love this conversation as much as I loved our first. And it's so wonderful to just reconnect with you,
Yes.
Andrew. Incredible insights. So thank you for that. What is the best way for our audience to get a hold of you with any questions that they might have, and any final words of advice that you might have for them as well?
Yeah. So my company is QMark. It's spelled QMARQ. And you can send an email from there, or give me a call. I'll be happy to chat through I've implemented dozens and dozens of these with various companies, so I know what consternation you might have looking in on this, and happy to help anyone achieve their goals. But the most important thing is when you start this odyssey, and it really is an odyssey, it's a journey that you have to be committed to. Once you commit, you have to stick to it. Because if you're an executive, if you're a manager, if you're in a position of leadership and you're not living and breathing it every day, then the people who work for you are going to ignore it. And then it's just going to become another binder on a shelf. You have to live it every day.
Well, Andrew, thank you so much. Your wisdom share today has been phenomenal. I have learned something, which is one of the dirty secrets of the show as well. It keeps me constantly learning as well, not just our listeners. So thank you so much for your appearance on StrategyCast. For those of you who want to get a hold of me, you can email me at Lori, Lori, at strategycast.com. And of course, sign up for the StrategyCast newsletter there as well. We are going to be turning this episode into a Home of the Brave newsletter as well, which you can download from my LinkedIn profile. Andrew, again, thank you so much for your appearance today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
That's a wrap. Thanks for joining us on today's show. We hope your strategic brains are spinning with new ideas and bold inspiration that will elevate your strategies and marketing know-how.